Let's break some wheels. Welcome back. My name is Matt Waters. I'm joined as always, not as always, but quite often by Mike Thomas. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well. I played basketball for 2 hours this morning.
Man, I'm jealous. I want to play basketball for 2 hours.
Yeah, it's great. If I suddenly stop responding, I've fallen asleep.
Of course.
So be on the lookout for that.
We're getting older, it's inevitable as we slide into the elder statesman version of this podcast, as we've joked about. But speaking of old people, I guess, Game of Thrones, The Wheelbreakers, Episode 2, which means we are covering Season 2, which I think this might be the best season of the show.
I'm not going to say it's not the best season of the show.
I think it's up there. I think it's in contention. It's somewhere between like 2 and 4. I don't know, but
I would say the strong contenders are the first 4 seasons.
Sure.
And I think, this is totally off topic, but what I've always said is they've kind of gotten better at making the show as the content has gotten less interesting.
Sure, absolutely. The production goes way up as the quality goes way down. They're working with what they have in season 1 and 2 when it's all very interesting, and then suddenly they get a fuck ton of money to have thousands of people on the screen and all this sort of stuff, and it's like, So, where we left season 1, obviously Ned Stark beheaded, Joffrey, new king, Daenerys has dragons, and this season, loosely, they're still following quite faithfully, but slightly less faithfully than season 1 did with the first book. This is following Clash of Kings, and it's the story of, the War of 5 Kings. So you got, Joffrey, the new king, Robb Stark, King of the North, Renly and Stannis, and then I guess the 5th is Balon Greyjoy, but I always thought Mance Rayder should be included in this, but they never do include him.
Yeah, it's definitely Balon, and the idea is basically that they don't take the wildlings seriously.
Indeed.
Like it's when he comes up, the king beyond the wall, they kind of make a joke, oh, another king. Yeah. But they don't take it seriously enough at this point.
Yes. So, we don't have a Ned Stark anymore. We'll talk about that in a minute as one of our big points. So we're sort of splitting our focus between all the different factions. Tyrion is now Hand of the King in Tywin's absence. You've got him trying to make the city not be just decline into complete bullshit, and he's trying to defend it while Tywin's out in the field fighting Robb. Stannis and Renly are fighting each other. Balon is, they are clearly the least advantaged.
The iron price. He's just saying that a lot.
Yes.
Meanwhile, man gives me my crown, I pay the iron price for it.
Meanwhile, they've gone north of the wall. They meet up with Craster, who is a terrible human being. He meets the wildling Egret, and he ends up infiltrating the wildlings, and he has to sell it by killing one of the Night's Watch, and that's where he ends his season. And Daenerys, across the Narrow Sea, she may have dragons, but her numbers are dwindling. They are wandering.
Actually, I disagree, because her whole entire story is, where are my dragons? And that's literally all you need to know.
This is true. She has very few people. They are wandering the desert. They come upon the city of Karth, and she learns some lessons about wealth and power and the world being a bit shitty, and she loses her dragon, she gets them back. She's a bit richer than she was at the beginning. So I think the biggest thing for me is, we talked about how Sean Bean was the biggest star of the cast season 1. We talked about what a big presence he is, how all the marketing was around him, etc. They've killed him. They now have to choose a new kind of protagonist, or they split the duties between several, and we've come up with some points to talk about ahead of time, and I think some of these bleed into each other. I think Tyrion is a very obvious one, and I think he bears talking about all by himself, but the show trying to adapt to not having a character like Ned around to be sort of undisputed pure good and actually is able to influence events, because Jon and Daenerys are also, huge characters. Like the big 3 becomes Tyrion, Jon, and Daenerys. But Jon is stuck way, way, way far away from the events that seemingly are the ones that actually matter. And Daenerys is in another country, in another continent, and, is struggling to even keep her people alive. So they're very far removed, and they're also sort of on the rise in terms of their power base. So they're sort of side stories almost. And, Robb, I think Richard Madden is decent and enough. They gave him more.
Fine.
Yeah, he is not a compelling force, but he did well enough that he got some extra scenes that don't exist in the book, because obviously he's not a viewpoint character in the book. The stuff with his wife, all of that, that's all just for us. But
it's all completely redone. It's one of the biggest changes from the first 3 books.
I don't even remember her name. Is it Jane something? And she's from out west. Like when he goes to try and take Castle Rock, he comes back with a wife as opposed to
in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the book he comes out with some
Jane Westerling or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's some family of the Rock. Or at least like whatever Tywin's country is. And that
gives you, an extra layer for Kat to dislike her and disapprove of all of it. Whereas in this, Kat just comes across as kind of like horrible for her treatment of Talisa and everything, who is this, nurse who charms Rob and everything. But just the show in general attempting to pivot away from Ned and get us used to the book model, which is moving between all these different viewpoint characters, and you sort of split your... we've got our favourites and our less favourite characters in the books, but I feel the show kind of in season 1 was like, it's all Ned, and then everyone else is a side story almost. And here they're trying to pivot to that model of, we want you to care about 5 or 6 different people and everything they do, and to mixed results, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's part rational and part irrational that we feel this way, because I completely agree with everything you just said. Ned is the center of the show, but really, it's like for 7 episodes in season 1.
Yeah.
And they did kind of a masterful job of transitioning away from that without us even really knowing it was happening. And part of it's just he's the biggest star, and he's at the center of the action. But they really did a great job of preparing you for this moment of, well, Ned's just one person in this crazy world. Like, it's not that big of a deal that he dies in a lot of ways. It's much bigger for the audience than it is for the world itself.
Yeah.
I mean, it leads to a war, but, like, the war was coming no matter what. In a lot of ways, it was inevitable. And I think really Tyrion here, like, really steps up and becomes the new lead of the show.
Yes, this is his best season.
Oh, yeah.
Tyrion as the Hand, like, having that measure of power that, he's normally, like, the smart ass who has just enough power that no one can just outright fuck with him, but he's not powerful enough that, he has a say. And here we get to see him enjoy that, and, like, he is functionally the most powerful man in King's Landing in ways, because he is able to kind of manipulate Joffrey and step around him in ways and overrule him and other, like he slaps him in this season and tells him that he's being an idiot, and it's just fun to see this like incredibly witty character just run shit and just like him fucking trying to find the rat, Cersei's rat, telling Pycelle, Varys, and Littlefinger all a different plan of who he's going to marry Marcella off to determine which one of them is telling all their secrets to Cersei. What I find interesting about that is, would he have just done whichever one got found out? Because obviously she actually does get sent off to Dorne to marry Tristan, I think. And it's like, if the right story had gotten back, would he have sent her off to marry Theon Greyjoy, or I can't remember the third one, but the
Vale boy.
Oh,
Robin. So
Robin. Creepy breastfeeding child. Yes.
Well, that's the thing I actually could bring up. In the book, it's a little bit different. I forget the exact details of what he tells everybody, but the only actual option was just from Dorne.
Yes.
So they made it a little easier for us to understand, but without actually giving us any insight what could have happened if it played out the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think maybe the assumption could be is that he put the one that what he wanted to do with the one he most likely believed to be Cersei's spy.
Yes.
Or at least to be like the spy who'd be stupid enough to go immediately run to her and say that. But yeah, I think Tyrion kind of operating in this world. And, a thing I always forgot the first couple times through is Tywin's speech to him at the end saying, show to me your worth. Like, show me your power. You're a Lannister. I don't trust anybody else to do this, but you.
Yeah. That is quite a harsh turnaround, because that's at the end of season 1, right? That he says all of that to him, and then by the time Tywin rocks back up at the end of this season / the beginning of season 3, like he's just pure horrible to him again, and it's like you told him you trusted him to go do this, and I think quite a sort of delicious part of this is Cersei's rage that she's not the one that gets to be in charge, and Tyrion getting to lord things over her a little bit, and just their ongoing bickering obviously escalates to quite a dangerous degree as he's trying to posture in ways, and when he's trying to protect Shay and he has to sort of sell the lie with Roz and stuff like that, it gets really, really out of hand. But at first, seeing these two bicker with each other and one-up each other is great.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why I always forgot that Tywin speech at the end of season 1 was that in retrospect it felt really out of character or inconsistent with what we saw.
Because every scene with Tywin and Tyrion after this, Tywin is just glaring at him with just indignation, like just hates him. And then you get that one touching moment where he's like, "You are my son. I trust you to do this." But it's good while it lasts.
Yeah, granted it's pretty much irrelevant for this season talking about it, given that the speech happens in season 1 and the payoff is in season 3 with their relationship. But it does hang over a little bit on when you rewatch it and you understand everything more. It's just like, was he trying to just motivate him? Was that like a momentary thing where he had no better option? Like what? And I think part of it is just that, Cersei allowing Ned to be killed proved that Cersei could not control Joffrey.
True.
Because Cersei would know that was not the thing to do.
And she did. She even tried to stop him, but she could not.
Yeah.
And in season 3, like, Tywin outright, like, says, like, you need to do a better job of controlling Joffrey. And Tyrion does. He does kind of, in his own way, like, slap him around. And literally, at one point, slap him around.
Right. But I think kind of something that's undersold for all this is Tyrion is probably partially, if not very much motivated to please his father here, which despite everything he says about him, I mean, like, it's his fucking father and it's Tywin Lannister. Like,
that's all he wants. All he wants in the world is for Tywin to actually be proud of him. And like, he has that hurt bunny look on his face when Tywin turns up and he's like, I held this city for you. I did all of this while you were, off doing that. And he's like, don't ask for medals. And it's like nothing will ever...
Jugglers and fools ask for applause. You're a Lannister.
This is a terrible Charles dance, but do continue.
That was a great Charles dance.
Okay.
Charles dance. But I think Peter Dinklage is really in his element here.
Yeah.
Like, seeing the transition from kind of like this shit-eating kind of asshole on the sidelines. I mean, like...
Yeah.
When you think about where the show is going and what Tyrion is doing in season 1, like, it's clearly as insignificant as anything that happens on the show.
Yeah. He's just kind of like, you're one of the bad guys, but you're the funny one, and I guess you're sometimes nice. And in this, we get to see, okay, I think he is actually on the side of good, but he is born to where he was born to. And they will set that up as the shades of grey, like, ongoing conflict of, like, how many of these people are, like, truly good and truly bad, and how many just, they are trapped in the wheel, the ongoing wheel that Dany must break. Also, like, Bronn being in a position of power as well is funny for a while, like, seeing him as commander of the Gold Cloaks and coming with it. Like, those two are so great together. And, like, when Bronn comes back, I think we said this last episode, nowhere near as good in my opinion, but these first few seasons with Bronn are amazing.
I think they became a little too self-aware of how good it was.
Yeah, maybe.
And they were, like, specifically, like, ooh, Bronn's our funny character. We could do more things with him. I think at least in the last, I mean, again, we're getting ahead, but the last 2 seasons, they kind of realized less is more. And I kind of save him for the last few episodes of each season instead of overdoing it with him.
Yeah.
But Peter Dinklage, I think, got the Emmy in season 1. And he maybe even got the Emmy here in season 2. I don't remember.
I don't know.
But Ned left a big hole to fill, and Tyrion filled it in some ways better than Ned could.
Yeah.
Especially in the sense that his character is, as he blatantly says, because the show doesn't always trust us to just pick up on things. I'm not Ned Stark. I know how this game is played.
I love that they do that. Like, they venerate him, but then they also, at any given opportunity, are like, well, Ned was an idiot. Like,
well, yeah. I mean,
and he was, but I just think it's funny that, like, he is this untouchable, wonderful protagonist that they then just slap down as much as they can.
Yeah. And what's even funnier, actually, is, again, like, in later seasons, they kind of go back to venerating him a little bit in the last couple seasons. I think as the Starks rise again, it's almost like his name starts commanding a little bit more respect again in the world. Yeah. Which is, I don't know, interesting, maybe, or completely unintentional.
So, as well as Tyrion as the Hand of the King, the other way I think that they kind of make up for that lack of Ned is they do a lot of really great and, in my opinion, smart character pairings. Like, you have Arya and Tywin, her, like, impressing him and making him do that little wry smile, and, her whole will anyone find out who I am thing, and trying to pass herself off as a commoner. You got Jon and Ygritte is great. Stannis and Davos, both new characters for this season. I think they offset each other really well. I think their friendship is actually quite fascinating. Jaime and Brienne, I think that's better in season 3, but that does start here. Tyrion and Varys is quite a good one. So I just think they come up with these good characters to bounce off each other. Some of them very logical and some of them unexpected. Like Arya and Tywin is an unexpected. Like for Maisie Williams to be in the room with Charles Dance for several scenes, it's like, oh, lucky you're going to get an acting education here. And I think she's really good in those little scenes with him at Harrenhal.
Yeah, they try to come up with some ways to make characters appear more often, clearly. I mean, like, in the books, Tywin has, like, 3 scenes before book 3.
Yeah.
Which is, everyone
I think,
knows this is his only book, really.
Like, you book Charles Dance to be in your show, you're going to use him as much as you possibly can. And yeah, he has got a much bigger presence here, whereas he's almost not a mythical figure in the books, but, he sort of flits in and out a bit more.
Yeah, he's only really in it at the end. He's quote-unquote on screen, or I guess on the page, but he's not a character in the books until, like, the last second. I think this is where they kind of figured out that a good shortcut for them, while killing time between the bigger set pieces and the bigger scenes, whatnot, was just to create as many good pairings as possible, and kind of just let them fill the time with banter to various degrees of seriousness. I would say the Tywin and Arya one is my favorite in this season.
Definitely. Just the number of times he's like clearly a step ahead of her, but he's like, you know what, you're smart. I'll let you keep going with this obvious lie.
And also, I mean, like, Tywin is a very nuanced character. He's not as much of a villain as I think sometimes the show wants us to think in 3 and 4.
Well, I think it's like he is doing all of this for the preservation of the house, this, that, and the other, and he does some undoubtedly awful things, like he orchestrates the Red Wedding, this, that, and the other. But then, like, he does seem to have... Well, I would say he has, like, a sense of honour or code or whatever, but, the Red Wedding is in clear violation of decency or whatever. But Cersei is always portrayed as just a much more vindictive and vicious character in a way that Tywin is not. Like, he's a bit more measured. And, I don't know, like, he's responsible for as many, like, evil acts as any of the other sort of villains in the show, but there is just that kind of underlying sense of, like... I don't know if it's just the acting performance or what, but just that character is... I miss him being around for as many awful things as he did.
Oh, we'll talk about later on, but I think the show losing him was probably one of the worst things to happen to the quality of the show.
Yeah,
and it's not even someone who's... I'm not really negative on 5, 6, and 7, but I think there is a steep drop-off, and I think it's largely because his presence is missing.
I hadn't really tried to think about it in that sort of pre- and post-Tywin way, but now you say that, like, that is a very clear signpost of where the show starts to... it's still this huge phenomenon. We're still, like, all over trailers and, like, day one for the... what's going to happen next? But, like, I think it was, like, actually good... And then it stopped. It became a bit more mixed results in the later seasons.
And I think that'll be a big focus of conversation in season 5.
For sure.
But I think, it's something I've been doing a lot of rewatching on The Sopranos and reading the big Sopranos book that just came out because it was the 20th anniversary. And a big concept they talk about with Tony was when people said they liked Tony, what they really were saying was that they liked Gandolfini.
Yes.
And that there was this kind of this innocence and boyishness and to Gandolfini that he brought to the role that made you love and like this character in spite of what he was doing. And I think Charles Dance, despite I think more consciously not trying to be likable, is just so inherently likable in some ways as a performer that you can empathize a little bit with what he's doing a lot of the time. And I think even to a certain extent, like, he's just he's not a wheel breaker. He's a player in this world, and he knows how the game is played. And he wasn't, his undoing, he just wasn't prepared for it because that was so unheard. It was so against the rules. And I think even your point about the Red Wedding, though, but think about is that he orchestrated in a way that in the end, the Freys are going to take all the heat historically for that.
Yes.
Because also, history's written by the winners, and the Lannisters were going to win.
And so he phrases it as, why is it worse to kill, like, a few dozen people in a hall
at dinner,
versus 10,000 in the field or whatever. And
conveniently forgetting that the phrase slaughtered the Starks.
They sure did.
Army. But still, like, I even think there is some... It's a question worthy of debate.
I think it's like he never attempts to position himself personally, or, like, he's not against being in a position of power, but he uses that to accomplish his goals, rather than someone like Cersei who just wants to be king. Like, she doesn't even want to be queen, she wants to be king. Like, the way it's written in the book, it's very much, I want to get the same treatment Robert got, I want to fuck women and do this and do that. She just wants that top position for herself. And I think Tywin is much more concerned with, like, the family.
Yeah. There's something, not noble, but there's something understandable about his actions in the context of the world as established by the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes the scenes with Arya. And I think they really do a great job of bringing that out in the scenes with Arya.
Yeah. So Stannis and Davos, as I said, newcomers to the show. Stannis is quite a contentious figure, I think, amongst the fandom.
Oh, yeah.
I actually quite like Stannis, like what he represents more than anything. Like, I think he's an interesting piece of this giant game, and they do a really good job of establishing him straight away that he is just a grim, incredibly serious person who, like, our second encounter with him after, the ritual and everything, when they're writing the letter about Robert being dead, and he has them take out the word beloved. And
Sir
then,
Jamie, if nothing else, he was a knight. Call
and then,
he was.
Well, no, he starts off by being Kingslayer, call him the Kingslayer, and then Sir Jamie, because he is a Sir. I think that's a really effective way to establish him straight away. And then, like, Davos is, like, your salt of the earth person, where you're like, why do you like this man who is, like, kind of an arsehole compared to you? And, like, I think their bond is actually quite interesting, and, like, the way that he raised Davos up and then punished him, and, like, Davos is like, you know what, I did Stannis is fair, if nothing else. And, Stannis' journey is very up and down. He is positioned as this, like, huge threat, especially with Blackwater, which we'll talk about. And then he'll kind of just go off and sulk for a while, and then it's like, oh, he's important again, oh, he's down again. And I think the way he exits the show is a travesty, but I think these two offsetting each other is great, and I like Davos a great deal, and they come as a package kind of thing.
Overall, I definitely would say thumbs up to Stannis. Mm-hmm. I think between Blackwater and him showing up against the wildlings, they had no idea what to do with him.
Yeah, pretty much. This is almost a trio, because you got Melisandre in the mix as well.
Right.
There's another new character, and she brings with her a lot of prophecy, a lot of mythology, and more magic and shit, like the hideous birthing scene with the shadow demon baby surviving a poisoning, and it's like it goes back and forth about how magical is she versus, like, is she a massive con artist, and what does she actually want? It's kind of, it goes somewhat unresolved, but I think, that power struggle of Stannis, when Stannis and Davos are alone, you can kind of see that Davos is able to get through to him, and he's like, you don't believe this is right, or whatever. But then Melisandre is always that voice in his ear. And I don't know if she's always, like, a great character, but she's always a very intriguing and obviously important one.
I think they got a charismatic actress to perform what is a relatively shitty role.
Kind of, yeah. And it's very repetitive as well. Like, she'll just always come out with, like, the same fucking prophecy. But I think they are electric on screen. Like, I can't, like, ignore her when she's talking, and not because she is always naked for no reason, but just, like you said, a very charismatic actress. And ideally they'd have written Stannis some better material for the next few seasons.
Yeah.
But I do like how they are established.
Yeah, I think 2 and 5 are his 2 strongest seasons. I mean, we'll talk a lot about it in 5. The actor's fucking phenomenal, especially in 5.
Yeah.
I think he does what they want him to do here. I think I brought up in the first episode, one of the big mistakes was not having him on the small council in season 1.
Yes, definitely. I think that was a great point.
You need to see that connection to Robert. You need to see that connection with Renly.
And Ned.
You need to have a better understanding. Because also, like, Renly is such a small character in season 1 that, as intriguing as he is, you don't fully get him, etc. And it takes a lot of steam out of their early conflict here.
Yeah. I think there's more to talk about with Ygritte and Jon Snow next season, but just as a very quick sort of one-liner, I think Jon becomes infinitely more interesting from the moment he meets Ygritte, because she's fun when he's trying to make himself more serious than he is, and she makes him question all these sort of hard truths that he's forced himself to subscribe to, and I think it opens things up. And hey, those two are married in real life now, so good for them. I don't know if you wanted to say anything more about those two, or we'll just...
I think with you brought up the Jon and Daenerys kind of being stuck on the sidelines a lot this season. I think there's because of how the show established the White Walkers from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. There's that sense that whatever Jon's doing is important because
he's where the White Walkers are.
Yeah, we understand there's that bigger threat out there.
Yeah.
With Daenerys, she's important because the show says she is important.
And dragons and all that kind of shit.
Yeah, you can erase Daenerys from season 2, and I think it really would not matter.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason we're not talking about her really here.
Yeah.
It's not interesting. Like,
it's not interesting. It's not well executed.
I will say it's kind of nice seeing her get slapped down quite a lot in this scene, because I mean she gets away with a lot of shit. And
metaphorically, everyone.
Yes, sorry. Okay, it's nice seeing her fail, and not in a vicious way, but she conducts herself with borderline like overconfidence all the time, and it's nice here to see her like be a bit futile while she tries to play the big man, you know? Like, I don't know. That's more about how they use her going forward, I think.
Yeah. It's just a bad story. I skip it almost every time when I rewatch it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really add much of anything. It was a total misfire.
It was.
And I think that kind of gets to one of my points I was going to bring up with Stannis, especially in 3 and 4, which is that just because a character is important and will be important does not mean we need to know much about them before they're important again.
That's true.
I think, in particular, Stannis kind of could have just disappeared between seeing the prophecy of, the White Walkers are coming.
Yes.
And then I think it would have been kind of amazing if he didn't show up again until the end of season.
And you just literally forgot about him, and then just boom, here they are. This is a problem with the TV versus book model in general, because famously, the books there is a whole book that has no Daenerys, that has no Jon Snow,
right?
This sort of thing. That's a thing you can do with books. Like, who gives a fuck? These are just characters on a page. In the world of TV, when you've got contracts and you're paying these people and this, that, and the other, it's like you have to use them. They're here, and I think. And that leads to a sort of greater focus on this core cast versus introducing all these new characters in the books. And, it is what it is. They're different models. But it is something that every now and then something like this will happen where it's like, right, we're paying Stannis money. We have to have him on the screen, and it actually is to his detriment. Whereas, like you said, he could have just gone off licking his wounds after Blackwater, seen the prophecy, and then, boom, surprise, remember Stannis? Then that would have been great.
Yeah. I mean, basically the only thing of value you get from Stannis is the bond with his daughter in 3 and 4.
Yes.
And they could have done that in season 2.
Yes, they could. I don't really know where to slot them. I don't want to go into it in detail, but, new characters here. We've got Margaery and we've got Brienne. Margaery is an interesting character in that I, to this day, have no fucking clue what her deal is, and the show will never tell us because of how she exits the show, but you immediately know there's something weird going on here, like she's very smart, but she's very good at playing dumb, and like the stuff with Renly where she's like, we can get my brother involved, I don't care, and it's all very like, what's your deal, like what's your play, like other than just, she wants to get as much power for her house as possible. You just always get this sense there was something else happening with Margaery, and that Martin hasn't quite gotten to it yet, and the show will never get to. But this is technically where she debuts, so I guess if we're going to talk about that debut, this is it.
Yeah, I think this kind of reminds me of Oberyn in some ways, which is that a really intriguing character gets introduced, and it tricks me into thinking the character is being performed by a good performer. Have you seen Oberyn in anything besides Game of Thrones? He's fucking terrible.
I think maybe one thing, but I don't really remember it. Natalie Dormer's like,
Yeah, and both of them, I was like, man, these guys are real, like, charisma dynamos here. Like, I want to see them in more stuff, and every time I see them, they're terrible. Yeah. Anyway, I kind of see Margaery as kind of a similar character to Baelish Littlefinger.
Sure.
And I think it's kind of fitting that they have a scene together in the scene, which kind of is, in some ways, in terms of the plot, the most significant thing to happen in the season in a lot of ways, especially since Blackwater kind of ended in a somewhat anticlimactic manner.
Mm-hmm. Soon, don't you worry.
Yes. So I think she sees that the game's out there, and she wants to play.
Yeah.
I think very similar to Cersei. She loves her brother, but she resents the fact that he's given things that she doesn't get.
Yes.
And she's going out and taking it. And I think...
Yeah. And she weaponizes her femininity a lot, and like she sort of subverts these ideas that people would have about her, and she knows what people expect. And in theory, we'll talk about her as we go, but she's always kind of just off to the side a little bit, so I don't know if we will, but...
I mean, here's the thing. I think she was a really interesting character. I think they did a good job with them overall.
Yeah.
With her overall. I think because they knew she was never going to be one of the final players, they held back on doing too much with her.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. I think in a lot of ways, by the time it came down to her versus Cersei, it was no question who was more interesting. But it was less, what they were building to.
Yeah.
So...
And Brienne of Tarth debuts in season 2. Great performance from the word go, I think. I think Gwendolyn Christie's amazing in this show. I don't know why she isn't a huge star, to be honest, because, I mean, she can do the physical stuff. She's a great actor as well. And, like, you know, having her debut by, like, defeating Iron Fist in Attorney and like, you know, she ends up paired with Jaime, and that will last for into the next couple of seasons and everything. But just her position in this world, I think, is fascinating.
I think Gwendolyn Christie is one of the most charismatic action stars going today. It enrages me how wasted she was in the new Star Wars movies.
What are you talking about? Phasma is an all-time villain, man.
Right. It was like some weird meta commentary on how stupid Boba Fett actually is. It's just a cool costume, everybody. Yes. It's not a cool character.
That's correct.
That's the only thing I can think of what they were doing with her.
The nerds are coming for us now.
I don't think they did a good enough job of establishing Loras Tyrell's talent in the first season.
No.
And yet they sell it so well here that it's a big deal that she won.
Yes.
And not just because she was a woman, but she knocked him off. She's fantastic. Yeah. I think one of the better characters, one of the better performances of the whole show. Mm-hmm. And I think probably another character we won't be able to talk about as much as we would like to in some ways, because she's just not connected to the biggest stuff all the time. Mm. But what a treat to have her along for the final 7 seasons of the show.
For sure. Right, so there's the Blackwater to talk about, obviously. But I kind of want to end on that. And
sure.
Before we get to that, I do want to just point out, I mean, this is a pervasive thing throughout the whole show, like the exploitation of women and all that. But this season in particular, and you pair it with Joffrey, you know, they do everything they can to establish Joffrey as just the worst human being for these next couple of seasons. And, you know, he's horrible in season 1, obviously, and he orders the death of Ned. But, you know, opening with his little displays of cruelty here and, like, you know, threatening to, like, drown that man in wine. And when he sent the 2 women and he has them beat each other for his amusement, and just everything that happens in this season, like, I mean, you know, the infamous, like, sex position scene is in season 1, but they have another one here with Theon, where he's talking shit to this woman on the ship and like explaining the plot while he does it. And I don't know, just this season in particular, it really bothers me, like, the way that women are treated, and I think it goes hand in hand with Joffrey, that, you know, Joffrey is this, like, sadistic human being, and it's that torture scene in particular. It's like, you know, so they have to be, like, completely naked this whole time, you know, while he's fucking having them assault each other for his amusement. And yeah, I don't know, every season you can find egregious examples of it, of like, was it necessary for this person to be naked? Like, was it necessary to have this much, like, violence towards women? But this one in particular, I think it really stands out.
I'm not going to disagree. I'm going to say it all bleeds so much together for me at this point as a viewer of it, that it's hard for me to pick out particular seasons for it. But,
yeah, and I would agree in general that, like, this has just always been here, but I don't know, when I was watching it back, I just kept finding myself sort of jotting something down about, like, was this necessary? Like, you know, like...
And the answer is no.
Like, Sands are almost getting raped, you know, and, like, the degree to which they make that such a, like, looming threat, and it's just, I can't not mention it because it was particularly bad here, but...
Yeah, I'd like to say, I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah. It's just, by this point you become so numb to it, almost... And it's disturbing how numb you come to it eventually in the show. I think, like, the Joffrey stuff is particularly just so unnecessary. It's like, the dude killed Ned. Like, we get it. He's the dirt fucking worst. Yeah. There could have been a way of doing that where you understand what happened. You don't need to see it. Like, it's so...
Yeah. And, you know, like, Sansa being, like, roughed up in the court and, like, punched in front of everyone, you know, all this, or slapped or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's like, if you did one thing a season just to establish what a patriarchal, violent society it was, like, I would get that. It's not to say that there's literally never been a good storyline in the history of anything that involved rape. It's just that, like, when you just make it, like, I mean, it's literally like background scenes in future episodes. It's dumb. Yeah. It's just dumb.
And like Littlefinger with Roz and telling him not to cry about the baby that got stabbed and what he threatens to do with her, and like wiping off that girl's mouth before he sends her in to replace her. And Roz in general, actually, like, you know, her whole journey, it's like, good for you. You got a lot of scenes out of what was a very incidental character, but like, if you look at all of her scenes, like, it's like, did you ever really get a chance to just not be naked or being assaulted or being treated horribly? And then she goes out as just, she's murdered off screen, and now we just have to look at her naked and covered in blood. Like, come on, guys.
Speaking of a character not in the books, by the way.
Yes.
Important to note, I think.
It is. It is.
Yeah, it's an issue throughout. I think every season there's something probably in particular that's worth pointing out about it. So I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
It's not good.
No,
it's not good.
It's not.
It's an issue they had from the beginning. I guess maybe season 7 is a little less fresh in my mind because I haven't seen it 4 or 5 times.
No one remembers what happens in season 7, Mike. We'll find that out when we get to it.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about the Blackwater. This is the first of a long-standing now tradition that they do a big event episode once per season. It's not always like this, but generally the whole thing happens in one location or with a very small number of characters. So the entire episode is in King's Landing while Stannis is attacking the city, and the only people we see are like Sansa, Cersei, Joffrey, Tyrion, Stannis, etc. This whole thing was originally planned to just be executed via Sansa and Cersei being in the Sept and whatever, but then at the last minute they got more money and they filmed the battle. And
look at that.
Yeah.
And they were given, based on the battle scenes, I'd say about $45. $47?
It does not look good, does it? They will eventually get good at like large scale battles, but it has not happened yet.
What's funny though is that because they skip out on the battle in the book in season 1, and you just get conditioned to think, oh, you're just never going to see anything.
Yeah.
When this did happen the first time, I'm like, wow, nice, a big battle. And every time I've rewatched, I'm like, this looks like it's done in a closed set where they made everything dark to hide how few people there were.
Yes.
And I don't know if it was a closed set, but they definitely made it very dark to hide how few people there were.
Yes.
Everything on the beach is pretty close to embarrassing, I would say.
For sure. The strength is the in-betweens. The conversations with Sansa and Cersei and like Tyrion like preparing for it, knowing what's going to happen and like that kind of stuff is all great. The battle itself is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like one of the most blatant examples of not making an actor wear a helmet, just so people would know who it was. Yeah. I'm just like, rocks are raining down from the top. Stannis put on a fucking helmet.
And like Stannis, for a decent time, feels like a kind of impotent character, but like here they do a really good job of making him seem like this fucking supernatural battle machine. Like, you know, they make all that. You know, they say how he held Storm's End for a year, was it, or something like that?
But you don't, at that point, you don't know what Storm's End is.
Exactly.
You don't understand the context for it. You don't understand why it's happening. If you ask the average viewer which war did that battle happen in, like, if they said anything, they would say, you know, the war that made Robert the king. Like, they'd have no idea what's going on for it.
Yeah.
I think
sure.
You're right, though.
He kind of shows up and he's just slaughtering people, and he has to be dragged away by his own troops because he's not losing. Like, he's fucking like taking names. You know, like it's great.
The scene where he shows up leading the army and said, "Let's take the city." It's a really cool moment. It's probably the first cool battle moment, and maybe at this point the only cool battle moment that's happened for the first 2 seasons. Like, you get that sense that, like, oh, this is a much different man than most of the men who lead the armies. Like. Yeah. He leads his army.
Yeah, he is a veteran soldier. He is fully prepared to go in first and to be at the front, and like you say, not wearing a fucking helmet for some reason. And he's just a veteran soldier. Like, Renly positioned himself however he did, but like Stannis knows war. And that's why it's like, well, Tyrion's fucked. And like, you know, he has his whole plot with like, okay, the dragon fire and all of that, and you think, oh wow, he's pulled it off, and it's like, well, that was like the first wave, and then they land on the beaches and like, oh, fucking him up, and like, you're like, okay, the Hound will even things up, but then his fear of fire sends him away. It does end in a defeat that is, I guess, embarrassing, but I think it's a very effective way of making Stannis seem legit dangerous, even if he does lose the battle.
Yeah, I think one of the good things you get from this is that, I mean, actually, well, it's not clear that Stannis survived, which I can't tell if it was on purpose or not. It wasn't clear who was dragging him away the first time you watch it. I think you kind of recognize that Stannis is a legit threat, and the Lannisters got very, very lucky here.
They did.
What's sad is that they basically never pay off the fact that Stannis is a real threat ever again.
No. And then he just becomes like that comic book villain who's like, I am the most dangerous, but it's like, but dude, you just lost. All you do is lose. Yeah. They also, they omit, because obviously Loras and the Tyrells show up alongside Tywin, and that gives them the numbers advantage. And in the book, they make this whole thing of, like, Renly's ghost. Like, Loras has... Is it his brother? Is it Garland?
Loras is, I believe, wearing Renly's armor.
In the show, he's wearing it, but I think in the book, he has his brother wear it or something.
Maybe. Yeah, right.
So Stannis and Renly had split the forces that belonged to them between them, and then when Renly's out of the picture, Stannis reclaims all of these men that were serving Renly, and Loras comes up with this plan of having someone wear Renly's armor, and that makes Stannis' forces think, oh fuck, we've betrayed our leader and he's back, we need to run away. And I don't think they do anywhere near a good enough job of establishing that's why, because Stannis has the numbers here and they are legit winning. It's not just Tywin's here on a horse, so you lose, fuckers. That's a large part of it, is that Loras outsmarts people and manipulates this advantage, and just it makes Stannis look worse than I think he comes across. And I don't know, he does look great individually, but I think the manner in which they lose, they don't do a good enough job of using that little element. And Renly's was he got a lot of scene time in the first few episodes of this season, so it's not like they're trying to do some obscure reference here. They could have just had some of the men running away, being like, it's Renly's back, but I don't know why they chose not to do it, but Loras is wearing Renly's armor in the show, it's just they don't make a thing of it.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't think they ever did Renly justice in life or in death, so
they did not.
With that.
The Hound actually offers to take Sansa to Winterfell, and she refuses. One of the many instances where she turns down a perfectly valid escape option for reasons that are only her own.
I think it's a really good episode for Sansa.
Yeah,
I think her response to Cersei's is really great. I think you kind of start to build a little bit. She's no longer someone to just feel bad for and pity. She's in some ways she's now making more choices in her own life and choosing not to go with the Hound.
I mean, I guess it's not dumb because the Hound is sort of a...
The Hound is one fucking person.
Yeah. It's just, I guess, from a hindsight point of view, it's that was your chance. Think of all the bad things that are going to happen now that might have been prevented. But equally, maybe he then doesn't pick up Arya. Who knows? We also get Cersei establishing the reigns of Castamere here.
Right. The Hound and Bronn interaction is fantastic.
Electric. It's fight, you fuckers.
I didn't even pick up on the fact that Joffrey sent him there to kill the Bronn. I thought it was kind of totally random.
Oh. I didn't either.
No, it's when he says, your Lord Imp is going to miss you. There's clearly this... I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say it's not definite.
Oh, okay. I didn't read it that way, but that is cool.
I think the idea is that Joffrey was clearly planning to kill Tyrion in this war, as we know by the end.
Yeah.
And he sent the Hound to kill his bodyguard, essentially.
Yeah. Tyrion gets attacked by someone on their side, and was it Joffrey, was it Cersei? When you're watching it, it's was this one of his own people?
And then the even more confusing thing that happens is that you think that Tyrion's face has been split in half.
Yeah.
The way they shoot it, which again, I don't know whether that was intentional or not, but I thought his whole head got cut in half the first time I watched it, having not read the books yet.
Yeah.
But it's a good episode. It's a much better episode of television than as a action set piece, put it that way, I guess.
Sure, absolutely. But just that they took a swing here. This isn't what they have normally done, and it's risky to just have one location, one set of characters. It's one of
only 2 times they've done that.
Yeah, it's kind of a bottle episode, I guess. But yeah, I
in the context of Game of Thrones, it's a bottle episode.
Yeah, exactly. I like when they take these kinds of risks. And while it's kind of an anticlimactic conclusion to the battle, I do think sort of the way they shoot that final moment, because Cersei's had poison this whole time in case she has to kill her kids so they don't get murdered by an invading army, and her about to give it to Tommen. And then the doors fly open, you got Loras and Tywin riding in, and she drops the poison. And it's oh, thank God. I think the timing of that is quite cool. It's just, if only that battle were better.
Yeah, and 90% of the audience thinking Lancel Lannister had just opened those doors is also a great moment.
Lancel Lannister.
Because no one had any idea who Loras really was at that point. Still, I think the wildfire actually being real was kind of a nice touch.
Yeah. Because
we didn't know that was happening. It really was unclear. I think Bronn being the voice of the cynical voice about wildfire was kind of a good thing to do, because we see Bronn is so battle weary and salt of the earth, he knows how the world actually runs, and the fact that he was wrong is kind of good.
Yeah, I think season 2 is generally pretty successful. I think it's better than season 1. Maybe because, I don't know, we've got some higher stakes and we're doing less establishment. But I think it spreads the attention around the kids are a year older, and they're slightly better at acting, and the stuff we've talked about here, pairing people up and Tyrion as the Hand. I think all of that is great stuff. Because you asked me last time, why do we like this first season? Because is it actually objectively good? And I struggled to really give you an answer as to why I like it, but I think all the stuff we've talked about here, minus the sort of treatment of women, is all great stuff, and why I would point to this as one of, if not the best season, right up there.
Right. Some are just quick notes.
Sure.
To end on, very notable that Jaime is in 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the first episode for one scene, disappears until the final 3 episodes of the season.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it's a little bit more shocking than at the time, which is you probably still weren't entirely clear who anyone was, let alone Jaime.
I miss him for not being there, but I think it works. I think that it also sort of does a decent job of establishing, because I think he's captive for a year or more. If you include the time he's with Robb and then the time he's getting back to King's Landing, I think he's away for 2 years or something. So I guess it helps there.
It's an extreme captivity. Yeah. The weird dream sequence where Daenerys ends up getting one final scene with Khal Drogo, despite how it is awful to portray that a woman falls in love with her rapist. Those two had that electric chemistry.
They did.
And especially in a weak Daenerys season, it was a cold bucket of reminder being oh my god, this was so much better last season.
Yeah, for sure. And they take out the Rhaegar stuff, because this angered me for a long time, because I started to really like Rhaegar as this sort of mythical figure with all this mystery around him. And I understand you don't want to invest too much into someone who is dead before your show started, so you're never going to show them. But just they would weave in a lot more sort of little clippings about Rhaegar, and I think in the book, when she visits the House of the Undying, she sees Rhaegar sitting at a table or something. I don't really remember all of it, but I think it's where the whole Song of Ice and Fire thing comes from, is something to do with him. But I remember when I read it, I was a bit disappointed that they didn't. I was where was this? I guess.
Despite being the delegated book expert on this duo, I have no memory of what you're talking about.
Fair enough.
I believe you.
Okay.
I believe you. Quick comment on Rhaegar. It was really disappointing when he was revealed to be 5'2" and 125 pounds in that flashback in season 7.
Indeed.
Anyway, rest in peace, Maester Luwin. You were a good, wise old character.
Yeah.
Provide lots of great exposition.
Yeah.
Blink and you miss it in 8 episodes, but Roose Bolton is all over this season.
He is.
You have no idea who he is. You have no idea why he's there. You don't understand anything about what's going on with him.
But they realise they've got to make him important by next season, so...
Yeah, you don't remember anything about him going into the next season, or that you don't even remember that he exists.
Yeah.
But he's there for a lot of it.
He sure is.
Jaqen H'ghar, great.
Yep.
Love Jaqen H'ghar. Overdid it later on, but he's great here. We have our second actor playing the Mountain at this point already, and we have a third one still to go.
Yep.
Everything with Janos Slynt is fantastic.
Yes.
I think he's my favorite idiot villain possibly ever. He's so good. He's almost like he's from a different show, because this show doesn't have a lot of characters like that.
Yeah, Tyrion owning him is great, I think.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of owning still coming his way. And Gilly, kind of annoying.
Yeah. Also, Theon goes home. We meet his sister.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I don't think Alfie Allen has the acting ability for... they do some scenes with him talking to his father. And,
he's trying so hard.
He is, and he just doesn't have it. And it's
I know.
If you were just a little bit better, these would be really memorable scenes. But I kind of forgot they existed. And it's in theory an interesting story. He's a hostage, and his father never made any attempt to get him back, and now he's come back. He's dressing him down for living where he did, and it should be this compelling story, but he just isn't quite good enough.
It's definitely one of those characters that on rewatch I'm oh, you probably were a bit more in a more empathetic position than I gave you credit for originally, but I guess you're just not a good actor because I don't care.
This will come up next episode. But yeah, his sister and his father debut here as well. So, and I like. Is it Yara in the show and Asha in the book? I think it is.
It's Asha in the book. They thought it was too close
to Aya?
Asha, the wildling woman.
Oh, Asha, yeah, okay, of course.
They thought Asha and Asha were too close.
Or like they changed Robert to Robin, Aaron, and
oh, right. I didn't even...
All sorts of shit like that. I mean, it's a fair point. There are a lot of names.
Of course, like, Yara sounds very close to Arya, so I didn't really...
Yeah. And then there's Wyler, who was Ned's once-mentioned fake mother of Jon Snow, and anyway.
So confusing.
Indeed.
Oh, one quick thing that I almost forgot. I think, despite that the Blackwater as an action scene is a real dud, one of the best sword fighting scenes in a show that I'm very critical of their sword fighting scenes happens in the season. And with one of my favorite small characters, Yoren was a great little small character.
He was.
The scene where he goes down fighting the gold cloaks in the woods somewhere, fantastically choreographed in whatever way. He's someone that I always am like, you know what? You did a good job, man. Your character really doesn't mean much in the end, but good on you. You tried. It's
great. Him, like, clearly outnumbered, but going down swinging is great. It's similar to Syrio Farrell, also great. You know, better, I think. But, you know, just these cool dudes who sort of just know what's coming and just sort of go down swinging, I think is great. Okay.
All right.
I think that's season 2, which means that's the end of episode 2 of The Wheel Breakers. Go to entertherealworld.com for more great content. Who knows what we'll have, because this is recorded so far in advance. But we'll be back next time to discuss season 3. Thank you, Mike.
And who are you, the powers say that I must bow so low? Only a cat of a different code, all the truth I know. In a code of gold or code of red, lying still has course. Mine are long and short, my